Armor Knight is widely considered one of the worst classes in the history of Fire Emblem. The two most important stats in Fire Emblem are speed and movement, and Knight lacks both of those. This makes early game armors usually some of the worst units in the games they appear, and even those with remarkably high stats for their join time tend to fall off later in the game. You'd expect the same to be true of Fire Emblem Conquest's Effie, but the unique traits of that game, like pair-up, stat stacking, and, most notably, reclassing, allow her to circumvent Knight's weaknesses and become one of the strongest units in that game. How? Let's find out. Hello, and welcome to this Effie analysis that I'm doing with my friend VexJL.
Hi!
You may have seen certain Birthright unit analyses by Bach and Rev unit analyses by Danny Doyle. I'm essentially doing the same thing, but, for the route that everyone already knows the meta of, so this has less reason to exist, but that's fine. I wanted to talk about Effie because I think she is a great example of why I like so many of these Conquest units, because she really goes to show the strengths of this game's reclassing system. So, without further ado, let's just get into it. To start us off, we're not here to analyze the meta, we're not here to tell you how strong Effie is, we're just going to go over some of her more interesting options. That said, despite that fact, we do of course need some guidelines so we know under what context we're analyzing Effie. We're going with the highest difficulty, because that brings out the differences between units, and everything that applies to Lunatic will also apply to hard and normal. We're not using DLC because not everyone has access to that. And similarly, we're not using the infinite resources patch for gems and food, because if you're playing on unmodded physical hardware, you don't have that either. No Might Castle abuse essentially means things like grinding gold from Lilith, or grinding supports from the private quarters fall into that category. And we're going to be playing relatively fast. We're not turtling, we're not slowing down to grind or anything like that. We want to always be making forward progress, and we're using Effie alongside a full team, so we're not soloing the game with her or anything. And with all that said, we can look at Effie's base performance as a knight when she first joins in Chapter 7. Is there anything here that stands out to you?
Oh, for sure. I mean, the biggest thing in here is her strength, right? Because this is Effie's whole kind of like what she's made for, just being a really, really strong fighter, and she has very big strength. And part of that actually is from Knight itself, the Knight class. Because Knight has very, very big strength too, like higher than fighter. So that complements her strength as well. And also, Knight also gives her a lot of defense. She has the defense +2 skill at base. So she can be like a really nice like bruiser type. Like she can hit hard, she can take hits as well. It's just nice.
Exactly. She's very tanky and she can deal a lot of damage, especially with her Croissant skill. That really synergizes with her high strength by giving her +3 damage when her strength is 5 higher than targets. And with almost any strength boost that will be active against most early game enemies, her weaknesses really are skill and speed. Her growths in those stats are actually pretty solid, but as a knight specifically, her bases are not spectacular. So you can get her to double after a couple levels, but early on it may not be what you want to be aiming for, and of course her accuracy is not phenomenal, though her high luck can balance that out to a point. The other thing that's actually surprisingly nice about Effie, and I actually didn't even know this before looking at them, but her pair-up bonuses are surprisingly good. I knew about the +1 strength at C. I've taken advantage of that in combination with Knight's strength and defense pair-up, which makes her really nice to make anyone very strong and tanky that she pairs up with. But surprisingly, all of her pair-up stats, except for the +1 luck at B, it's all strength and speed, which makes her actually one of the better pair-up units in the game.
It's really nice sometimes, because like if I want a strength pair up, Effie is actually decent. I like that for her.
Yeah. Her tag team bonuses are not as good. She gives almost all crit, which is not what you want in Conquest. The best weapons in the game are bronzes, which can't crit in the first place, and if you are critting, you're going to be denying your dual strike partner experience, which can be a bit of a hassle. But the +5 dodge at B is pretty nice.
The +5 dodge especially works well with Arthur, who very notably has very little dodge, and since they have fast support together, they can get to B support really quickly. They're very synergetic, is what I'm getting at. We can go over the Arthur synergies a bit more later on, but just for now, like, just the 5 dodge, even though it doesn't seem like much, it does grant other units a really nice buffer for, like, if they don't use bronze weapons or if they're going against enemies with higher crit.
And yeah, you can have this by Chapter 9 immediately, so it's really nice. And like you said, a lot of the bonuses that Effie has come from her Knight class, so let's see what she looks like with just her personal stats. As you can see, her strength is still pretty phenomenal, but her defense is actually surprisingly middling without the buff from the Knight class. Knight is also giving her a 15% skill growth, so her skill without Knight can be pretty mediocre, meaning you probably want to put her into a class with high skill like Archer or Maid. But speaking of reclassing, Effie actually gets some pretty nice options. Her base class of Knight is not spectacular for her. It's alright in the early game, but when it comes to the promotions of General and Great Knight, I don't think they have great synergy with her stat line, especially with her speed. It can be difficult to take full advantage of her speed in General and Great Knight, but through her Heart Seal and through Friendship, she gets a lot of interesting options. I know Vex has a favorite here.
Yes, I do. Archer Effie. Period. Oh my goodness, this is the most fun class that I have ever done on Effie, and it works really well actually. She gets it from A+ support on Mozu, and she can promote into Sniper, which gives a lot of good offensive stats, notably hit, and then she can also go into Kinchi Knight, which gives her flight access, which is also very impactful. Just even generally, like the Archer stat line, it gives a lot of skill for her, and she can also use her own innate huge strength into really, really good, powerful, accurate bow dual strikes, which is, I think it's amazing. I think it's by far her best option.
Being one of 3 archers without marriage is very unique and very powerful. This is one of the reasons I like Nyx so much, and it applies to Effie too. And stuff like Skill +2 and Certain Blow from this class really help her accuracy a lot, so it really patches up her flaws. And obviously, like you guys know me, I'm a huge fan of the Kinchi Knight class because of the flight and mobility that it gives. It's one of my favorite classes in the game, but you might be surprised to learn it's actually not my favorite class for Effie specifically. That honor would go to Maid. She can get Maid 2 different ways, either through her Heart Seal or with an A+ support from Elise. Both of these options are pretty viable since Elise joins in Chapter 7 at the same time as Effie, and it's a fast support, so you can get the support done in only 4 maps. It can be a little tricky to build support with either a staff lock unit or an inaccurate axe user, depending on how you're using your Elise, but since you can get it done so quickly, it is not a huge deal. It really just depends whether your Heart Seal economy or your Friendship Seal economy is tighter, which one you want to go for. And while obviously Effie does not synergize very well with the Troubadour or Strategist class lines because she has 0 magic, the Maid class actually lets her use physical 1-2 range daggers, which can double, which is a rare trait in Conquest. So I think it's one of her best classes.
Yes, I totally agree. And the kind of similar with what we were saying with Archer, it synergizes so much with Effie in that she gets to bring along her really high strength, high damage stat line into the dagger class, and then daggers themselves will provide a lot of hit for Effie. It works together very well.
Yeah, the Bronze Dagger has 100 hit, which is really good, especially compared to Lance's. The other friendship option for Effie is to A+ Nyx for Dark Mage. She doesn't get nearly as much out of this class because she obviously is not a magic user, but I'm not strictly opposed to dipping for Heartseeker on physical units. Heartseeker is minus 20 avoid to adjacent enemies, so it can be a huge hit bonus with one range weapons, which obviously Effie appreciates. I think the biggest issue with builds like these is, for melee units, their biggest accuracy issues tend to be with javelins and hand axes, and Heartseeker will not be active at 2 range with those weapons. So it's not as amazing as you would like, but it is still a nice bonus if you want to take Heartseeker into another class.
If you're using like a Beast Killer against the Chapter 19 Kitsune, oh, it is so good there.
We all know how good Odin is with that combination, and Effie can get it too if you're willing to dip into Dark Mage. But before you can get any reclassing done, Effie will have to gain some levels in Knight. So let's see how she does as a Knight in the early game. The main early game niche with Effie is using her high strength stat combined with Puissance to one-shot fast but frail enemies, like these paired samurai on Chapter 9. These enemies are paired up so you can't use dual strikes against them, and they're very fast, so it's very difficult to double them, making Effie one of the best answers to them. And there are a lot of instances in these early maps of fast but frail enemies like samurai and ninjas that Effie does pretty well against.
This is one of Effie's really good matchups. Samurai are all over early game, so having someone who can just one-shot them, even if they're paired up, that's fantastic. And the nice thing is that it also applies to other frail enemies, right? You can one-shot the Chapter 8 Dark Mages, you can one-shot the Chapter 10, 11, and 12 Ninjas. It's really nice. She has a very, very strong role in early game.
So that makes her one of your best early game units, in my opinion. The one major issue with this is, since she is fighting fast enemies that she wants to one-shot, her accuracy will not be fantastic. She has here an 88% displayed hit. I can think of a couple ways you could bring that to 100, but for example, if you want to use the Javelin, either for positioning or to enemy phase ninjas, that is going to be a lot lower, so you're going to have a backup plan ready in case Effie misses, or just do something else entirely. So Effie is, of course, pretty solid in this role, but I think the interesting thing about her is, with her speed growth, there is another way to use her that you wouldn't think of at first glance, and that is actually trying to double with her. And with Effie's specific combination of high strength, high bulk, and okay speed, with some speed stacking, she is able to take on some pretty large groups of enemies that most other units would significantly struggle with, like the Chapter 13 Cavaliers around Reyna. So Reyna's group, one of the typical ways to handle them is to lure Reyna away on turn 1 with a HP tonic Camilla. However, you may not want to use that strategy if you want to keep your Camilla healthy, or if you just aren't satisfied with the hit rates. So in that case, having a strong and bulky unit who can survive Reyna and her Cavaliers is pretty solid, and this makes for a great way to earn Effie experience in the early game before reclassing her into one of her better classes. This is one of the instances where you can get a lot of use out of natural cover. There's a forest tile right next to Reyna, or not right next to her, but near where you can lure her in, and that makes her so bulky that she lives all of these enemies and kills every single one of them except for one Beast Killer Cavalier who doesn't see any damage against her, and Reyna herself, who's attacking at 2 range.
It's a great matchup for Effie, and a very, very smart use of all of these different varied buffs. Like, you have Kaze pair up, which I don't think anyone really considers making Effie double. But if you have these kind of buffs, you can take her to fight anything really. It's quite nice for her flexibility in that she can fight many, many, many different kinds of enemies. Even the ones that are bulkier but slower. Like, she can't one-shot, but she can double and still kill.
It's pretty impressive, and she doesn't even need every source of speed stacking. This is with no tonics and no meal. If there's something slightly faster, she can do that if you're willing to invest the resources. But yeah, overall, Effie as a knight has a lot of good matchups, and I hope this showcases that. That said, when she promotes, things aren't quite as good for her. If we want to compare her to the other knight in the game, she is of course a lot stronger and a fair bit faster, because Benny does not have much strength or speed, but despite comparing her to what some would consider the worst unit in the game, I don't think it's clear-cut, which is not a good sign. Benny has 12 more hit here with Fierce Man, which can sometimes be more valuable, and we are aware that Benny has a lot of major weaknesses, and those carry over to Effie to an extent. Her speed in Great Knight won't hold up forever.
Effie, I think, throughout the middle of the game or towards late game, she does kind of suffer if she's not reclassed out. I think the biggest flaw in her as a Great Knight is the skill, because Great Knight doesn't really provide that much skill, and if she's trying to use a javelin against the two ranged enemies that will appear later on, it's not as flattering, shall I say. So that's something that some people will look at and be like, oh, maybe I should use someone else, like Benny, for example. Since Benny has a lot more hit, it's a very significant lead, actually. It's a bit unfortunate for her, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, and generally it's not much better because it lacks the 7 movement of Great Knight, and Weary Fighter really does not do a lot to help her. If she's one-shotting everything anyway, then there isn't much point to not being doubled, since the enemy won't be able to get that second attack off. If you're absolutely set on using Great Knight Effie, one-shotting is absolutely the way to go, but it will be pretty difficult. That said, there are ways to make things easier for her, like marrying her to Silas, for example. Now, I would not recommend putting Effie in Cavalier or Paladin, but by simply promoting into Great Knight with a Master Seal, she is able to pick up the skills Elbow Room and Shelter. Elbow Room helps her one-shotting potential, and Shelter is a very nice utility skill when combined with Azura Song, or even just for its intended purpose, to shelter units out of the way of dangerous enemies. And if you don't intend to keep Effie in Great Knight forever, if you're fine with keeping her in it for 2 levels, these skills can be nice things to take into other classes as well.
I think, actually, I must confess, Silas is my favorite partner for Effie. I think Cavalier, it's nice for Effie because not only does it give her a bit of movement, but the skills are so good. I love Elbow Room on Effie. More damage on her means more one-shotting. It goes well into what she wants to do. And Shelter is just a really nice support skill. I can't really fault it for anything. Since they both join early, it's not very hard to get to S support.
Yeah, exactly. Once again, they both join in Chapter 7, as does Arthur, another popular marriage candidate for Effie, and Vex's favorite unit, as far as I'm aware.
Arthur and Effie, they both have a fast support, actually, so not only do they join together very early on, they also get to S support faster than most other pairings, which is pretty great.
There are 3 units who can give Effie Fighter through marriage, but Arthur's the fastest and the most popular.
Going into Fighter, Effie actually gets a lot of strength, which is expected, right? It synergizes pretty well with her, I'd say. And the skills, I mean, HP plus 5 is good, since Effie lacks HP herself. Gamble, I'm not even going to consider. Otherwise, though, it's a pretty solid class for her to be in, especially once you promote. Hero is a very good class for Effie. It gives a lot of skill and then rounds out her defenses as well. That's nice for Effie. And on the other hand is Berserker, which doubles down on her offensive stats. So she'll be one-shotting, she'll be doubling so often. I highly recommend this, actually. It's so fun.
Yeah, Berserker Effie is a build I hear a lot of people talk about, but it's not one I've actually tried myself. I can absolutely see the appeal of its high strength plus axe fair, where she can one-shot a ton of enemies. I actually decided to put this to the test by putting her against the bulkiest enemy I could think of. That doesn't have Pavis, and also isn't a Stoneborn, the Chapter 26 generals. And the interesting thing about this is she just one-shots them with almost no support. Just a rally and a tonic, and the hammer, which obviously is an effective weapon. But generals are very bulky, so even against regular enemies, you can probably expect her to be one-shotting very often.
If this is her combat against the toughest enemy in the game, well, okay, that might be an exaggeration, but one of the toughest enemies in the game, just imagine her combats against any other enemy. Like, if it was an Oni chieftain, for example, she would still be, like, doing well.
She is pretty solid, but Berserker is, I don't think either are of our favorite classes for Effie, which brings us to Sniper.
Oh, Sniper. There are so many things I love to say about it. I think the biggest thing that Sniper gives to Effie, like, as an advantage, is this really high hit. Like, something that I glossed over kind of intentionally in the Berserker section is that Effie can struggle with hit rates. It's not pretty sometimes. In Sniper, she basically does not have to worry about it at all. It's very, very zero effort required for getting hit rates up. And then on top of that, you have Quick Draw, you have Bow Fair eventually. Those are very good damage skills, which will also stack with Puissance, which is great. She can still one-shot things in Sniper as well.
And comparing her to Mozu, who is the other main popular archer candidate, you can see that she has quite the advantage of strength. She should have, with Puissance, a +6 attack lead over Mozu, and also a +3 defense lead with defense +2, which could be even more with natural cover active.
You can imagine if Effie even so much as looks at an enemy flyer, they're freaking dead. Even if it's half damage from a dual strike. It is very funny, actually.
The main advantages from Mozu here are +7 speed, which is significant, and to an extent +10 hit, though I can imagine neither of them will be having any accuracy issues.
Effie, like, her speed might be lower, but once you continue building her, it actually becomes pretty decent, since she has a very good speed growth.
And to put Sniper Effie to the test, she is able to take on generals that even Berserker Effie cannot. The endgame generals have Pavis, which have damage with a proc chance from swords, lances, axes, and I believe fists and saws, though those last two aren't really important. So if Berserker Effie was to try and take on this enemy with her hammer, there is a decent chance that it will end up halved and not even kill, unless she crits, obviously. And if you're trying to make a reliable clear, that's not something you want to happen. Meanwhile, bows bypass Pavis, so With a bit of stacking and the crescent bow, she can punch through even these generals' defenses, which is very impressive.
Yeah, this is actually my favorite interaction in the game. Just having Effie just punch through the general's defense. And going back a bit, this is actually something that she can do with very little investment compared to Mozu, who probably wouldn't be able to do this unless she got skills like Life and Death or Spendthrift. So that's something that's really nice for Effie. It's a very nice contribution since generals are to kill. And yeah, she does that very effectively.
Absolutely. The main thing you would need to be conscious of here is building enough bow rank to be able to wield the crescent bow, especially compared to Mozu, who in all likelihood is being reclassed immediately at Paralog 1. Effie will have to wait a couple more maps to build her friendship, and so her bow rank probably won't be as high. But there are 4 arm scrolls you get in Conquest, and if you're able to build Effie to C or even B rank seems pretty realistic to me, to be honest, then it only takes 1 to get to this threshold and be able to start killing some of the bulkiest units in the game.
And actually, something that I wanted to bring up is because Effie is so strong and so accurate, she will be everyone's favorite dual strike partner. So if you want to build her weapon ranks up quickly, just have her dual strike with everyone because she will provide very, very powerful dual strikes with her stats.
Especially with the crescent bow itself, right? Since that also doubles with dual strikes, and it doesn't activate the strength halving effect of the crescent bow, which makes her, yeah, as you said, a very, very powerful dual striker. So that is Vex's favorite way to use Effie. Now, as for me, I really fell in love with Made for Effie on my last playthrough with her. If we want to compare this to another popular 1-2 range dagger user, we can look at Master Ninja Silas, which he gets from Kaze. As we can see, Effie once again has a attack lead, though Silas does have elbow room to counteract puissance, and a reasonable bulk lead with defense +2, even more with natural cover if you can find places for that to be active. Silas, because of the Master Ninja class, he does have leads in speed and hit, because Master Ninja has some innate soft stats. And Silas also has the support skill Shelter, which can make him a solid utility unit when he isn't seeing combat. But overall, since Silas is considered one of the best units in the game by some very competent players, I think this is a very favorable comparison for Effie. If she's able to stand up to someone that many consider one of the best, then clearly she is a very good user of this class. And while it may seem that Silas is overall the better unit, since of course he also has the option of dipping for Stronger Post, or if you're that kind of player, Soul, there is one thing that Effie has over him, and that is the fact that she gets made a lot earlier than Silas gets Ninja. Since Kaze joins at Chapter 12, the earliest you can get Ninja on Silas without any optional chapters is Chapter 18, by which point he will have E-rank daggers. Effie can be in Maid by as soon as you want, really. I would recommend putting her in Maid at Chapter 14 when you unlock the Tier 2 shops, and use either a Heart Seal or a Friendship Seal from that. And with that, she's able to build some weapon ranks for a very unique showcase. So since Effie is able to get D-rank daggers by Chapter 18 and of course 19, she is able to use the Hunter's Knife on those chapters. And that makes her one of your best answers for the Paladins, Bow Knights, and Kitsune of those maps. We have here Effie with a fair amount of stat stacking to put her against every single, well, not every, but almost every paladin and bow knight in the lower right quadrant of chapter 18. This is something I brought up briefly in my How to Train Your Nyx episode of that chapter, that Effie can put in a lot of work here. She does not double the bow knights, but she does one-shot them, if I remember correctly. And her accuracy is very solid because of how accurate daggers are, compared to someone like Xander, who is using Siegfried to handle all of them, which has weapon triangle disadvantage and only 80 hit. And Effie also gets to take natural cover for a spin here with the stairs. There are actually a surprising amount of places you can take advantage of natural cover if you're looking for them. There's the forest in chapter 13 and the stairs on chapter 18, as I just discussed, but also the forts on various chapters like chapter 22, the stairs on the endless stairway, and almost the entirety of chapter 19 with all of its forests and mountains, which is something you won't notice if you're playing with any other unit, but when you're using Effie and looking out for ways to take advantage of her unique strengths, it's something that will come in handy very often.
I don't really have anything to say, but I am very, very impressed that Effie is able to do this. And I also want to comment, it is kind of funny, like in chapter 13 and chapter 18, that the terrain tiles are oh so conveniently at the edge of the range. Like, so you can like bait enemies. It's kind of funny, but hey, I cannot argue against more natural cover.
There is one thing that Silas can do to stand up to this, and that is getting Butler from Jacob. However, I don't think this is a fantastic option for him, since unlike Effie, it is denying him access to a better class in Ninja. So there is an opportunity cost for the better short term compared to the better long term. So if you want Silas to replicate this performance, you are going to be hampering his late game potential. Also, Silas will need a lot more defense stacking without Effie's bulk skills. Meaning Effie is probably your best unit to handle this portion of the map. It's not the hardest part of chapter 18 by any means, but getting every enemy in this area just done within one turn is going to free up your actions a lot on the following turns, where you can handle the generals or the sorcerers nearby instead, which is very helpful in clearing that map. And of course, if Effie herself wants Ninja, she can get it from marrying Kaze. I think Effie is one of the better recipients of Kaze marriage, simply because it lets her take advantage of her high stats, and of course patches up her accuracy. Master Ninja has a couple advantages over Maid, namely its higher speed, its higher hits, and it getting Shuriken Fair at level 15, but of course, it is by no means a necessity for Effie, since she does already have Maid. This boost may not do as much for her as it does for some other unit, like Baruka, for example. Though, Baruka probably wants to stay in Wyvern.
It's a nice upgrade, particularly because of the extra hit. But one thing I want to say is that, unlike someone like Silas, for example, she can actually train up her dagger rank in Maid firsthand, then be able to transfer over to Master Ninja, which it's convenient. So you can kind of use Maid as like her training wheels, so to speak. And then once she gets into Master Ninja, she can go wild.
Absolutely. And going into Master Ninja, or of course using Silas as a butler, does make Silas lose his leads over Effie. So suddenly they are evenly matched. Silas does have the option of taking advantage of Foul Friendship to make up for some of Effie's leads, but that will require hampering your Corrin's ability to see combat, which can be fine if you're using a rally bot or parabot Corrin, but not every Corrin will be able to handle that debuff. Meaning, Effie is a very consistent option compared to the likes of Silas, who has a lot of variables you need to keep in mind, which makes me really appreciate Maid Effie. Is it her best build? Maybe. I think that's up for debate, but it is definitely my favorites. And I think that's pretty much all we have to say.
Yeah, that's all I have to say on Effie.
Effie having so many options really goes to show the potential of Fate's reclassing system. No matter how you try to use her, she'll always be different, and she'll always be able to put in a lot of work. So as long as you don't keep her a knight for the whole game, Effie will serve you very well, and I consider her probably top 10. I think she's one of the better units in the game.
I probably wouldn't put her in top 10, maybe. I need to rank the units again, but she is very strong, especially in her early game, in my opinion. But with all these reclass options, you know what that makes her? The queen.
True. Units like Effie are why I like Conquest so much. The unit building aspect of Fates is really my favorite part of it. And that's pretty much it. Vex, do you want to plug your channel?
So, my channel is VexJL. I also do Fire Emblem Fates content, primarily Conquest. And my current series is doing the whole game in 100% hit rates. So, it's a very fun series. I hope you check it out as well. And yeah, like, comment, and subscribe, I suppose.
Exactly. Like, comment, and subscribe to Vex's channel specifically, who makes much more impressive clears than I ever could. And yeah, that'll be it. This has been Coding Ant, and I will see you next time.